I'm David Sisco.
And I'm Laura Josepher.
Welcome to our first ever live episode of In Between the Lines. We are so happy to have you here.
Yes, we are live from the Jill Edmond Virtual Theater with an amazing crowd consisting of our friends, family, and colleagues to celebrate the release of our textbook, Performing in Contemporary Musicals, published by Routledge Press.
Now, you won't hear a live audience. They're muted when we're in presentation mode, but we promise you they're actually here. They're not just invented in our head.
Yes, they are. And what a great crowd of folks. We are so glad you're here today to celebrate our textbook, which Routledge published today.
That's right. You know, Laura, the idea of this textbook, it came to us, I think, over the pandemic, and we started writing it in May of 2020. I think I can speak for both of us when I say it went by very quickly, the process. We actually met with our editor, Ben Piggott, at Routledge in January 2021. And by August of that year, we had the first copy in for review. So, and now here we are. Now, sadly, our author's copies have not quite yet arrived. I know they're on a ship or boat or something somewhere, God only knows. But we can't wait to actually hold them in our hands.
Yes, and we're going to have a great show today. We will be interviewing writers from around the world, literally. And as usual, we'll be featuring some great contemporary musical theater songs.
Yeah. So over the course of today's show, we're going to give you a little peek into our book. Let's start with chapter 1.
That's a very good place to start. In chapter 1, we cover several different aspects of how musical theater developed since the early days of the art form in an effort to come up with a working definition of contemporary musical theater.
Yeah, so we do this by talking about several different kinds of musicals that have developed over time, how dance and movement have evolved, and the growing demands on performers, and also looking at how musical theater has become a global phenomenon. Wherever possible, we attempted to recognize the essential contributions of the many cultures that have influenced musical theater, especially knowing that the history of this art form has often been whitewashed.
Yes, David got his geek on doing his research in chapter 1.
Totally did.
In chapter 2, we do a deep dive into the development process of musicals because musical theater is a global art form, as David said. So we decided to talk to writing teams in the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, and South Korea to help readers get a better sense of how musicals develop over many years and how they maybe develop differently depending on the country.
Yeah, this was actually one of my favorite chapters in the book, working on this. The writing teams we interviewed were incredibly generous and shared with us the entire development history of their show and answered questions then specific to that history. It was really fascinating. We end that chapter with some great conversations with producers, including Ron Simons, Lori Glodowski, and James C. Nicola, the artistic director at New York Theater Workshop.
So one of the writers that we talked to is here with us today, Britta Johnson, who's been hailed as Canadian musical theater's next great hope. Her musical Life After has enjoyed several productions, and it's actually coming to the Goodman Theater in Chicago from June 11th to July 17th. So Britta, welcome to In Between the Lines.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so exciting to be here.
Yay.
Oh, we're so happy to have you here. So Life After tells the story of Alice, a 16-year-old whose father is a famed author of self-help books. The show is about her puzzling together what happened to her father the night he tragically did not come home. Can you share with us the inspiration of this musical?
Absolutely. I started writing it when I was still a teenager. I'm not one anymore. And while the show is by no means autobiographical, the path this family walks is quite different than mine. I did lose my dad when I was young, when I was 13. So the initial questions that inspired it certainly grew out of my own life. The questions that emerged the first time something's taken from you before you're ready, the way the world can change when a cosmic shift like that happens, and kind of the comedy that can be found as the mundane day-to-day of adolescent life coexists with this huge altered way of being that grief invites in, where past and present and speculated future kind of coexist, and the comedy and tragedy and all the many colors to find in that I think music can hold. So I went into it thinking, I wonder if I can use musical storytelling to talk about grief in a way that feels honest to me. And as the piece grew, it grew to be very far from my own life, but certainly the initial texture of it was something I could recognize and I was interested in exploring.
So your show's had quite the journey from being part of a Canadian theater festival to moving to the Old Globe and now to the Goodman Theater. First of all, congratulations, because that's so exciting. But we also know that the development history of your show has been a bit of a roller coaster ride, certainly in part because of COVID. Can you talk about how you keep moving forward when it may take months or even years for the next step in the development process?
Certainly. The show has kind of grown up with me. I started writing it as a teen, and it's gone on kind of the most incredible journey of my life and connected me with all the most incredible collaborators I've ever met. It's been the very best thing that's ever happened to me. But it started at the Toronto Fringe Festival with a bunch of, actors who were volunteering. And I remember there was no storage backstage, and I would lug my keyboard to the theater every day to play it. Because I don't know, I was 24 and I didn't think that cabs were worth money. I've changed my opinion on that. And then it kind of had this incredible journey where the next year I got to play professionally in Canada, and then it went on to the Old Globe. It was all happening really quickly. And then, of course, much like for many writers, COVID was a bit of a record scratch moment where we had a big regional production set up that kept having to be moved and adjusted. And as is the case with many of us, we eventually had to be cut loose. There was just too much backlog. And of course, that was devastating and was devastating for our whole team. But I was lucky that at that point, my team of collaborators had become my friends. And we kind of kept the piece alive, and we continued to talk about what we were dreaming of for the next step. And luckily, by some strike of luck, this opportunity emerged for the Goodman. They had an opening in their season. And because we kind of kept it alive and on the tips of our tongues, we were really ready to just launch and dive in. And I feel really lucky, because I think that every artist who's on this call knows that it's been a couple of years of big questions and big existential questions about what the way forward might be. And I'm really excited to dive back in. And frankly, to write about grief, because there's a lot of grieving that's been happening.
Yeah.
I would say.
It's going to be so profound. I think it's going to speak to audiences in Chicago in a very profound way. So in the book, you share this really great story about rewriting the 11 o'clock number of the show in previews at the Oak Globe in San Diego. And I was just wondering if you could recount that story, because for us, it's so indicative of how much can actually change in a new musical as it's being developed.
Yeah, I'm a writer who doesn't stop writing until someone says, you just have to stop now, which is a conversation I've had to have many times in my career so far. But throughout our rehearsal process at the Globe, thanks to a very generous director and incredibly game cast, things had been growing and changing a whole lot. And as is what happens, if you pull one thread, then that means that all of a sudden this moment of shift for our protagonist, it wasn't quite speaking to the journey that she'd been on in this draft. And I remember sitting, it was like in our third preview, and I was like, it ain't it anymore. It ain't it anymore. And afterwards, we put our heads together, the music supervisor, the director, and myself, and we're like, what would it look like if with these two previews left, I rewrote that. And I went home and I rewrote it. And then my music supervisor, Lynn Schenkel, is, an incredible powerhouse of a musician, and she orchestrated it in real time. And I remember the next night, we actually did the old version, even though we'd staged the new version, because the lighting wasn't ready. And it was kind of I'm not a risk taker, and it was one of the bigger risks I've taken in my life, because what if it didn't work? What if it was worse? We were locked in. But you know what? It was a huge step forward. And I remember when it finally hit the stage, all of us in our row of creatives, we looked in and we were like, there it is. But of course, since then, I've rewritten it again. So yeah.
But I love that, that especially for performers, helping especially young artists understand, like, there will be a time when you do the old show at night, and because you're rehearsing the new show, the new part of the show in the day, and you're going to have to just kind of like file that away and be like, oh, okay, yeah, just remember that for tomorrow night, right? And it's definitely a skill set.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're gonna actually listen to one of our favorite songs from your show, Britta, entitled "Poetry." So everyone, please enjoy this performance with Britta at the piano, sung by Sophie Hearn.
These days I've thought a lot. I've thought a lot about the way I feel about you. I've thought a lot. These days I've got a lot of reason to doubt you, yet to live without you. I've never been much of a poet. I never could touch with words like you. I've always just thought that we should say things how we see them. The sun is hot, the sky is blue. But suddenly I'm out of words. I'm out of words. Suddenly I'm out of words. I'm out of words. This is bigger and brighter and wider than I ever knew. Losing is confusing. What once was black and white is turned to gray, all different shades so strange and new. And there's a certain poetry in knowing you, a certain poetry in losing you, a certain poetry in knowing not a single word or phrase could ever do. Not for you, because my former logic won't apply. But it feels like rain and yet the ground is dry. And when I love you but I hate you, and I can't articulate exactly why. I've never been much of a poet. I never could touch with words like you. I've always just thought that we should say things how we see them. But how I see you and me, how I see you and me, you and me, it looks a lot like poetry.
Wow. Britta, that's so gorgeous. Oh my gosh.
It works me out every single time I hear it. So deeply moving.
I think we're going to need to take a trip to Chicago is what I think, David.
That's happening.
Well, Britta, thank you so much for sharing your time and your beautiful song with us. We are so happy to have you represented in our book, and we just can't wait to see your show in Chicago this summer. Thank you for being on In Between the Lines today with us.
Congratulations on the launch. It's so exciting. Thanks for having me.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, well, why don't we talk about the next couple chapters of the book?
Sounds good. So in chapter 3, we talk about the differences between 29-hour readings and the 3 different tiers of workshops. And we review how the many players in the new works process, such as the director, the music director, stage manager, have augmented roles. So we also talk about the actors' rights and responsibilities where readings and workshops are concerned, which is critically important.
Absolutely. In chapter 4, we talk about dramaturgy. Wow, this chapter really worked us out. A lot of performers, if they're part of a musical theater program, they will take something like script analysis, and they'll analyze a show like Streetcar Named Desire, right? Which is great. It works, it's been produced a couple times here and there, right? But a lot of times they're not looking, they may not be doing a script analysis on a new musical, or at the very least, they're not looking at material that needs dramaturgical help. And this is really important because it's so kind of central to understanding how to work on a new musical and how to work with specifically with collaborators, with creatives on a new musical. So in this chapter, we talk about interpreting libretto's language, dissecting story and character arcs, discerning musical, lyrical, and rhyme structures. And then we combine all of these elements to explain how a scene and song function together.
Yeah. One of the cool things about this book is that we also have activities in most sections with a really robust online companion for further study. So readers can actually analyze and even practice writing lyrics and music using these activities that we've provided.
Yeah, we're really psyched about that. Laura, I feel like it's time for some more guests.
I think that's a great idea. So let's welcome to the show Jim Barne and Kit Buchan. They are the creators of the hit UK musical, The Season. Jim and Kit, there we go, were winners of the 2018 Styles and Drew Mentorship Award, and they've been collaborating for many, many years. They've known each other since they were 8, David. Jim and Kit, welcome to In Between the Lines.
Hi,
Hey.
thanks. Thank you so much for having us. So lovely to be here.
Our pleasure. And I think we just may be waiting for Jim to pop in. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm wondering where he is. Sure, he's not far, but I can vamp, until he gets here. I can describe him.
He's having drinks in the green room.
Sounds good.
Yes, so I just want to echo what you were saying about Britta's song. It was just absolutely magnificent. I was blown away. Yeah. And
it's really beautiful.
And I suppose, it's really encouraging to hear that she managed to straddle the pandemic and sort of keep the enthusiasm for her project alive and keep the creatives on board and keep that momentum going, just so that the snowball was still just moving when the pandemic comes to an end. And it's really encouraging to see that. I applaud her for that.
Absolutely. Oh, Jim, we had you.
We had
him
you,
for a moment.
and now you're gone.
You've got a glimpse of how handsome he is. And he likes to tease, that's very much.
He
doesn't
here,
at all.
And now he's gone.
You've probably heard this before, but maybe it's from a generally non-American perspective, but certainly from a UK perspective, we do often look with great envy at the American system and how many producing houses there are, and how much audience and encouragement and resource there is for new musicals. It does seem miraculous. That's not to say that from your perspective it isn't challenging. It looks great, and her story looks really encouraging. I should say North American.
Yeah, and you shared a little bit about that in the book, and how, but also how kind of plucky that has made the writers in the UK. And I know certainly you've shared about the Drew and Styles and the support of them, and there are other organizations that have kind of cropped up, right, in supporting.
Yes, I don't mean to be gloomy. Of course, for one thing, we've just got a far smaller population and a smaller audience. I suppose there's something cultural as well, like the musical is held in higher regard, I guess, in America, on a strictly cultural level. But there are, as you say, there are excellent organizations that encourage new writers. And as I think maybe what I must have said to you in the book is something along the lines of, it can, that kind of slightly austere atmosphere, or maybe an atmosphere in which it can take a long time to have your show produced, and maybe you might find you might have to compromise on certain things in order to get your show produced. There are silver linings to those clouds. They help you to be resourceful and flexible, and also the community itself is quite mutually supportive. And actually, we just need more stuff like this book, just all the encouragement we need, and that applies to performers as well, of course.
Well, we're going to start. We're going to kind of go into some of the questions that we had talked about, and we hope that Jim will shortly join us.
I hope so too.
So we had a really great conversation, the three of us, when we were working on the book, and we covered a lot of ground. But one of the things we didn't talk about is that you and Jim had a band, and that's how you, I think, kind of started working together creatively. And so I just wanted to kind of ask you about your band and if you still perform.
Well, yeah, I mean, the band's still going. It's been going for, we've been in a band for 12 years or something. We started when we were teenagers. Jim and I, as you said, have been friends for a long time. And yeah, I think the band, in a way, is I think if Jim were here, he would say kind of everyone who writes musicals should be in a band if you have the opportunity, just because it affords you the opportunity to just try out material in a way that doesn't require an enormous structure to enable you to do that. You can just turn up in some basement and play songs you've written, and it really acclimatizes you to just being in front of an audience, presenting new material, and in a way, like pop music or folk music allows for that to some extent. It allows for experimentation, and I guess, yeah, just without requiring. You don't need a theater or a producer to give you the thumbs up or give you, the resources to do it. And also, yeah, I guess you get a lot of songwriting out of your system in a way. So you just get better. But then on the other hand, aside from the positives, I suppose part of the reason why we began writing musicals was because we felt limited by pop music. Just because pop music is, of course, an admirable art form, which is very experimental, but perhaps we were ambitious to tell stories, and it can be limiting pop music and almost a bit too abstract, maybe. And it was nice to write something more concrete. So I think it's a big part of who we are as musical theatre writers, being in a band. And yeah, we're still playing. Although we over the period of COVID, we've just kind of become a Spotify band. I guess we've been recording remotely, and like Jim will record the piano, and then I'll record the vocal, and then someone else will do the guitar, and then Jim binds it all together. It's quite fun learning to be that kind of a band for a while.
Absolutely. What's the name of your band, so we can check them out?
We're called I Said Yes.
I Said
It's
Yes.
an older. I didn't come up with the name.
That's okay. Available on Spotify. Well,
yeah, go ahead.
check you out.
So your show, The Seasons, follows this story of a character named Dougal. And he's traveled from Northampton to New York for his father's wedding, where he meets Robin, whose sister is becoming Dougal's stepmother. Right? Convoluted, right? Thrown together in a city that never sleeps. Your musical is a romantic comedy that provides the ultimate test for the theory that opposites always attract. So can you tell us a little bit about how this musical came about and the unique way in which it premiered?
Well, yeah. I mean, the story I think you're referring to is the sort of germ for the idea of this musical came from one of those resources I was describing. There was a little festival that existed at the time in a theatre that no longer really exists, sadly, called React, which encouraged new writers to come in and write short pieces reacting to whatever show was in their main house. So you had 24 hours to write it. So it was a Jason Robert Brown musical they were showing at the time. We were invited to write a response to that show in 24 hours. We wrote this rather cynical little piece that was about two actors who were rehearsing a very romantic duet, but who were, while rehearsing, they're also just arguing and bickering and being unkind to each other. And it was just a sort of little comic conceit. And then after, in order to sort of exaggerate the romance of this duet, we set it in New York at Christmas. And then after that piece, somebody said, you could write a show set in New York at Christmas, and it would, you could keep it really acerbic and kind of make it a parody of stories that are set in that place at that time. So we started doing that, and it felt kind of, because we came at it slantwise like that, we didn't feel so much pressure that we were sort of writing our first show. And then before we knew it, we departed completely from that original idea. We don't have any of the same material, any of the same music, but like I said, it was almost like a Chinese whisper. It was like it started as a joke, and then before we knew it, we were doing it seriously. And that story, I think, for me, says, if there are any new writers listening, like a musical can grow out of any kind of strange soil. It doesn't have to be like a bolt of inspiration that's really like intellectually profound or something. We wrote what was effectively quite a silly or quite facetious little short play in 24 hours, and that proved to be the germination for something that we're very serious about. So yeah, that's the story of how we started it. Yeah.
And it had a very interesting premiere, right? Can you tell us about the premiere of the show?
Yes, I can. Yeah. So once we, after the long process of getting people to see and listen to it, we eventually attracted the attention of a couple of kind of producers who themselves were kind of starting out on their careers, and we set these producers up on a blind date and hoped that they would agree to work together, which they did. And they, as I said, in the UK, there's a relatively small pool of producing houses who are interested in brand new musicals, and they kind of they approached these two wonderful regional theatres in the UK. One is called the New Wolsey, which is like this very modern theatre in Ipswich. If you're familiar with the UK, it's kind of on the far eastern flank of England in that kind of big bulge. It's considered quite a remote place. And then the other was this kind of venerable Victorian theatre in Northampton, which is in the Midlands. And in order to get them to agree to kind of mutually, simultaneously produce this musical for the first time, we had to put the show on for one night in Northampton. And bear in mind, we had a full-size Revolve that we'd borrowed from the Chichester Festival Theatre, which is completely the other side of the country. We opened the show in Northampton for one night, packed everything up into a lorry, drove it 5 hours out to Ipswich, opened in Ipswich the following night there for 2 weeks, then came back to Northampton for press night and finished the rest of the run there. And I was never really CC'd on the reason why this was necessary, but presumably it was, and it was just like a kind of eccentric bit of production history.
But that's so cool because you got a chance to see how two different audiences, reacted to the show. I mean, they're geographically different, so that's really interesting.
Yeah,
that's not something the normal trajectory of a show. So that's cool.
I'm not even sure there is a normal, in this country. I think every musical probably has its own eccentric kind of birthing story with its own like midwives and you kind of have to be quite creative with it if you're a producer.
So can you tell us, obviously, the pandemic has paused many things, and we know that the London transfer of the show was delayed also because of the pandemic. Can you tell us what's next for the season?
Well, yeah, I mean, I really felt a kinship with Britta when she was describing her story, although obviously on a much smaller scale. We had to kind of grit our teeth through the pandemic because we would have transferred to a kind of an off-West End theatre in London in the winter of 2020. That was kiboshed, and then actually that theatre is sort of no longer really. It's sort of morphed into a TV soundstage now, I think. But yeah, I'm just recently we learned that we've had an offer from a different London theatre for next winter, so winter 2023, which we're thrilled about. But I was just going to say, like, having paid so many compliments to American musical theatre, I suppose I have one, like the only slight grudge I have is that our show would have been able to come on this year, except that New York has poached our director, who is going to be choreographing merrily at the New York Theatre Workshop this winter, and hence we couldn't do the show this year, so we've had to wait an extra year. But obviously that's amazing for him, and we need to get
just like Americans,
just hoover up all the good people. Why don't you take our director?
They're bringing a British actor along, though, so
who's that again?
Daniel Radcliffe, that little Harry Potter guy.
Yeah, I guess he's done some stuff.
He's done some stuff.
Yeah.
So we are so happy to have you here, Kit. I'm so sorry Jim didn't make it back on with us due to technical difficulties, but he's here with us in spirit.
He is.
And we're so happy to have you both represented in our textbook, and even on our cover. Our cover uses one of the photographs from your production of the season as our cover art. So we are very, very grateful to you for that.
And the gratitude is all mine. Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks for
our pleasure.
Spending some time with us today.
Good luck with the book.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Laura, why don't we talk about, tell our listeners about chapters 5 and 6?
Well, that's a good idea.
Well, chapter 5 is your baby, so I'm going to kind of let you take the lead here.
Okay. So chapter 5 is dedicated to acting contemporary musical theater. So every musical may require a different approach to acting depending on the time period in which it's written, where it's set, and the vision of the creative team. In this chapter, we talk about how to analyze the style markers of the show to be able to make strong choices, to maintain flexibility, and act a song.
Chapter 6 is dedicated to singing contemporary musical theater. And in this chapter, we talk about how to cope with the ever-growing demands of contemporary roles by understanding the different modes of singing. We call them golden age influenced, belt, mix. Taking apart a song, learning how to really take apart a song so it's fully in your body, understanding how to incorporate style markers, voice. And we also discuss how to translate notes from the director and the music director into the voice.
So again, both of these chapters have activities to help the reader understand how to approach contemporary work. We also have resources and recommended reading in our online companion.
So it's our pleasure to welcome our next guest, all the way from Australia, Vidya Makan. Vidya is a seasoned and award-winning performer. She's currently playing in 6 at the Sydney Opera House, so she's no slouch. She's also preparing for a workshop of her new musical, The Lucky Country, which is in development at the Hayes Theatre Company Limited, just across the what do you call it? Bay. Harbor. Thank you. There we go. The harbor from the Opera House. And on a personal note, I had the pleasure of working with Vidya when I was an artist in residence at the Street Theatre in Canberra. So I'm so glad to see you again, Vidya. Welcome to In Between the Lines.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
So first of all, we want to thank Vidya for getting up so early to be with us, because listeners, it is currently 6 a.m. in Sydney.
It's been so weird. When I got up, it was dark, and now it's like light outside. And I work in theatre, so the last time I witnessed that was I couldn't even tell you.
Well, we're so grateful to you for that. So your show, The Lucky Country, centers around individuals whose stories have been historically erased in Australian culture. Can you give us a little bit of an outline of your show?
Sure. The show was born as this idea I had for a song cycle. I'd gone and seen a major new Australian work that I was really excited about. I'm a woman of color, and I've always loved musical. You can tell it's the morning, musical theater. And I was really excited for this work and went there, and I was really disappointed in that the work was funny and people kind of ate it up, but again, racist characterizations of the only minority people on stage, and a very white Australian lens yet again in this space that I thought might be something different, seeing as it was a new musical. And I felt really enraged and heartbroken and inspired, and I wanted to write a show that specified its heart on what it means to be Australian, and how someone like me can speak and look Australian, and the other minority lenses that just seem to be consistently erased from our national storytelling. So it started as this idea for a song cycle where I just would have 4 actors, each of a very different demographic, singing songs about different things that I thought might be Australian. They did a workshop. At that point, the piece was called My Home Too. I did a workshop back in 2019. And this will connect up with the next question. I think we're going to talk about my amazing collaborator. But then in 2020, we were on break from 6. It was only meant to be a 5-week break, and then we were meant to go on a national tour. And that ended up being a 2-year break. But in that time, my mentor and colleague, Sonia, watched an archival of My Home Too, and we chatted about it, and she goes, "You're writing a piece about nationhood. It's not really a song cycle, like a black box 45-minute song cycle. If you want to do it justice, it really is a much bigger undertaking than I think that you've even realized." And so we've been working together for 3 years, two and a bit years now, just redoing, breaking open the show and rewriting a lot of the songs. It's turned into a bit of a concept musical where we start with Joseph's character, who you'll see in a second when we watch the song, basically coming into his own light when someone that he relates to, Baker Boy, who's a very famous hip hop artist here, who sings in his own tongue, Yongamata, from the north of Australia, is awarded Australian of the Year. And then Joseph kind of goes on this journey of what it means to be Australian, but clashes with his teacher's idea of Australian identity. So I feel like I rambled on a bit, but that wasn't a brief outline of the show, but it's a bit of an insight.
It's fascinating.
Absolutely. So you've mentioned Sonia Suarez, your collaborator. Can you talk a little bit more about how she got involved and how you collaborate and where that has taken the piece?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting one. It's not like, dare I say, a normal new musical. I mean, what does that even mean, really? Because I feel like we're all kind of creating our own process, like Kit mentioned.
Yeah.
But this particular piece has been another layer of, well, what is it in the idea that it's this concept musical? Sonia has been working really, her work is in the blood and in the skeleton of the songs. It just so happens that I'm the songwriter. And so she's almost like a glorified dramaturg where we sit together, we talk about the stories that we want to tell, almost like a book writer. It's just that our piece doesn't have a narrative book. Her ideas are all through it. And from hours and hours and weeks of conversation and research together, I then go away and I kind of see myself as the craftsman. I use my skills to write a song, but Sonia is all through the lyric, is all through the melody. Her ideas are just so in there. And so we've kind of coined the phrase songs written by Vidya Makan in collaboration with Sonia Suarez, because it's quite different to any other process I've ever done with any other collaborator.
That's fascinating. So you have a workshop coming up in a week at the Hayes Theater, I believe. Can you share with us what you hope to accomplish with this workshop as compared to like previous steps in your development process with the show?
Totally. This is a really exciting workshop. It's actually an orchestration workshop. So it's focusing solely on the music of the piece and the orchestration of the piece. The work now has 6 actors, and we have a variety of different characters in the work. But each song now really does sound like a completely different song from a completely different musical. We move from hip hop through to like a Aussie folk music, through to we have a Russian choir from Mullumbimby. Don't ask, you can look them up, Dostoevsky, they're fascinating, to Indigenous storytelling. So every song truly sounds like a different play in itself. And something that's really exciting about that is we really want to stay true to the idea of minority lenses in our band as well, and what we're saying through the music and the instruments that we use. So we do have guitar, keys, bass, and drums, but on top of that, we have other instruments that our incredible musicians are able to play. And something my amazing orchestrator and music director of the show, Heidi Maguire, her and I are trying to figure out is how do we make this work for it to sound cohesive as one show, The Lucky Country, as one nation, with all of these different characters. And that comes from the melodies to the actors playing songs. And so we're having an orchestration workshop next week to kind of test out Heidi's orchestrations, and our guitar player will like jump to the Turkish oud for one of the songs. And, you know, we've got an amazing didgeridoo player coming in, bringing all the different keys he has and different didgeridoos to see how that works throughout the show. Yeah, so it's really exciting. It's something I've definitely never done before, but who knows? I think we kind of also don't know what we're going to find, because so much of this is about the collaboration with these musicians, because they're the experts at their, like, I don't know what even the notes on a Turkish oud are. Yeah. You know, so yeah, we're definitely excited about that.
Sounds
I think it's just such a good reminder of you know, how orchestration is a storyteller in that process, right? That's really fascinating. Cool. We're going to take a listen to your song "It's a New Day" from The Lucky Country, written by Vidya Makan in collaboration with Sonia Suarez, as you said, performed here by Joseph Althouse. Let's take a listen.
It's a new day, it's a new wave. Can you feel the rays from the sunshine shining out on my side? The sun is out on my side today, side today. It's a new day, read the news, say, can you feel the groove? Hey, look, I'm telling yous came to come alive. Let me share this vibe, okay? Sydney, can you hear me? My boy from my hometown was upgraded with a cape and a crown, yo. And his skin's still hella brown though. You listening? Cause I'm glistening. I'm talking talking about pride and joy. Young Australian of the Year was awarded to my Baker Boy. You feel the weight of the world when you're walking young, black and deadly. Every day is a whirlwind ride of some way I'm meant to be, meant to see clearly. Need to impress my family, find my destiny. But the weight can crush you down when you're just not what they want you to be. Miss, I'm sorry. Miss, I'm late. Miss, I didn't. Miss, my family. Miss, I'm trying. Miss, the hate at me. Miss the wall. I wanna be free, I wanna lead. But you feel the weight of the world when you're sent back home and can't compete. They always said, cause you're tall boy, you're short boy. But there ain't no one out there playing like me. And you wait for the day you can say he's a role model to see. Day didn't come till now. Baker Boy is a brother like me. And it's a new day, though a new shame. Can you feel the rays from the sunshine shining out on my side? The sun is out on my side today. Feel the spring in my step, jump, shoot, he scores. The sun is out on my side. The sun is out on my side today. You feel the weight of the world when you're walking young, black and deadly. Hold up, let me listen to the song now. Muddy and a muddy and a muddy and a muddy and a muddy young mata. Baker Boy's tongue is singing free. Now the weight won't crush me down, but the weight has made me see clearly. Miss, I'm coming. Miss, you're late. Miss, I'm training. Miss, my family. Miss this shot, miss, I'm kidding. Mr. Great, that's me, won't miss my shot. I wanna be free, I wanna be seen. Feel the spring in my step, now I got a right to dream. I will never scrub the black off my face again. Will never bite my tongue, I'll find pace. And then the whole wide world will know of this boy right here. Cause Baker Boy was Young Australian of the Year. I said Baker Boy, Granny did you hear? Baker Boy, and now I'm here. Now I'm here, now I'm here.
That was awesome. Such a great song. It makes me miss Australia so much.
Well, you're welcome back anytime, David.
Yeah, I want to see more from the show for sure. Definitely. Well, thank you for sharing that so much with us. We wish you so much luck with that, Vidya, and Lucky Country. Thank you for sharing that song with us and for sharing your time with us in this very early morning for you.
So much for having me, and just congratulations on the book launch. I can't wait to read it.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
So we're going to dive into the next couple chapters of the book.
Yes, let's do that.
So chapter 7 is about auditioning for new musicals. Now, while there are many components of a musical theater audition that may be the same, regardless of the year the show was written, there are differences, especially when you're auditioning for readings or workshops of new musicals. It requires some added finesse, some added research and skill. So in this chapter, we talk about how to read a casting breakdown, actually read a casting breakdown. A lot of people don't read a breakdown, and there's a lot of really good information in there. So we teach that. We also talk about how to understand a show's influences and consider the tone of the show as well. We talk about how type has been used as a gatekeeping device in our industry, and how an exploration of a performer's essence helps create more equitable space. And then we also delve into choosing material, dance calls, callbacks, and self-taping.
So once you get cast in that new musical, you're going to have to learn how to pick up new material very quickly. That is the focus of chapter 8. So we give you helpful tools to quickly take apart scenes and songs, along with a lot of resources for practice on our online companion. The online companion, by the way, is totally free, and it's located on our website, contemporarymusicaltheatre.com.
Yeah. So it's our pleasure to introduce to you a very special person to us. Not only has he been our phenomenal stage manager / tech director guru this afternoon, but he also runs musicaltheaterradio.com, the station that hosts our very radio show. And he's a co-sponsor of this event here at the Jill Edmond Virtual Theater. Please welcome Jean-Paul Jovanov.
Hello.
Hello, Jean-Paul. So we just want to take a moment and have you share with our guests a little bit about musicaltheaterradio.com. Can you tell folks how you created this radio station and the different kinds of programming that you offer?
For sure. So I was out of the business, out of musical theater for, I don't know, a good 10 years or so. And I was running a company about 3 years ago, and it wasn't working. I wasn't making any money. I wasn't happy. So I decided, you know what? I've pivoted 4 times. When you pivot 4 times, you're in the exact same place where you started. So I said, forget this. Let's go back to my roots, my musical theater roots. And yeah, I decided to create a musical theater radio station. And now I'm happy, still making no money, but at least I'm happy. Right? As you know, as artists, nobody makes money. And if you do, please tell us the secret. So yeah, it's a free radio station on the internet, musicaltheaterradio.com. We play music from around the world, popular and rare, new and old, but our main focus is promoting creators and new works to help them try and find a bigger audience in the world. It's as simple as that. We try to play at least 20% of the songs are going to be from artists that are new or shows you might not have heard of. And the rest of it will be the classics, of course, but also those Broadway and West End shows from like 1963 that had an 8-performance run, but still has a great cast recording. So I'm so glad when I met you guys and how we all have the same beliefs that musical theater, new works are so important to the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's, Laura and I have often commented that we will turn on the radio station and listen for an hour and you're like 10 songs that we didn't know. And we're, we don't know every musical theater song, but we know a lot of them. So it's so great to have our ears opened to what's out there. Our show airs every Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern time. We hope you'll tune in. And Jean-Paul, again, thank you so much for your invaluable time today, and we're just so grateful for your help. We also want to give a shout out to our other amazing co-sponsor, Lori Glodowski at 35th Parallel Productions. She's just an amazing human being. Make sure to visit. Hi, Lori. Please make sure to visit their website, 35thparallelproductions.com, to see all the amazing shows and projects that they are currently producing.
Thanks, Jean-Paul.
Thanks.
All right, you've been so patient. We are wending our way through the chapters. Just 2 more to talk about, chapters 9 and 10.
So chapter 10 is solely dedicated.
Chapter 9.
Thank you. I was so excited about 10.
You just running to the end.
I just ran to the end. I have a glass of bubbly waiting for me, so that's maybe what it is. Chapter 9 is solely dedicated to the art of collaboration. Laura and I have often commented that none of us ever took any class in collaboration, which is really interesting to us because that's all we do as theater artists. I guess it was just assumed that we would figure it out through scene study and productions and things like that. But since collaboration is really the centerpiece of the new works process, we really wanted to dedicate a whole chapter to the book. So we decided it was important to talk about how do you work with people, and specifically how do you work with people who may be difficult. This is as many people in the book said, a reading or a workshop of a new show is like a pressure cooker situation. It can be very intense. And so how do you work with people and be respectful, but also advocate for yourself in a way that shows the creative team that you respect them?
So our final chapter, chapter 10, we talk about working on musicals that, how do we say this delicately, David, don't quite work yet.
Yet. So it often takes years for musicals to develop a clear story and character arcs. And performers are a very important part of that process. How do they bring things to light that don't work? So in chapter 10, we talk about why you might want to work on a show that still needs dramaturgical help, and combine
the dramaturgy skills that were outlined in chapter 4 with other resources to connect the dots in a scene or your character arc or, a song, anything when they just aren't there on the page. That's it. So we are happy to offer all of you that and listening to us on the radio a 20% off discount on the textbook. So if you use the code ASM02, just go to Routledge.com, and that's ROUTLEDGE, and search for our book. You can use the code ASM02 upon checkout, and you'll find the code in today's program if you don't have a pen and paper handy.
We hope that you'll agree that this book is substantive. We are proud to say that there's no other book out there like ours, and we're also glad to make this resource available to you. And in addition to the many activities throughout our book and the online companion, we have grounded the knowledge we've shared in this textbook with real-world scenarios, thanks to our over 50 interviews with folks from every corner of our industry.
Yeah, that's right. We interviewed over 50 people to make sure this book was as relevant and as equitable as possible. So please take a moment to see the names of the folks who generously donated their time. It's in our program, which you'll be able to find a link to once you go back to the main room after our presentation. We are really grateful to everybody who spent time talking with us.
Absolutely. We also want to take a moment to thank the folks who did some great performances as references for some of the exercises we recommended in the book, and all our amazing colleagues who read early versions of our manuscript and gave us helpful feedback. Again, you'll find their names in the program.
We would also like to thank our amazing guests today. Everybody can come back if they want to. Britta Johnson, Jim Barne, Kim Buchan, and Vidya Makan. We also want to thank our wonderful sponsors, musicaltheaterradio.com and 35th Parallel Productions, Jean-Paul Yovanov, Lori Glodowski. We are so grateful to you both for helping to make this happen. Is Jim on the phone? Jim's texting in.
Jim, we adore you. So sorry.
You.
Yes. Yay, there he is. Yay. Good to see you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you all for being a part of this. We really, really value you and all that you have offered, both today and in the book. Thank you so much.
So on a personal note, I would just personally like to thank my husband, Juan, and my daughters, Chelsea and Sadie, who put up with a closed door while I was tediously writing this book. I also really just want to shout out David, because David and I are much more than collaborators. We are business partners, but more than that, we are friends. And that is what has carried us through this very difficult, but also really fulfilling project.
Absolutely. Very much feel the same way. And it's been a great collaboration. And I want to shout out to my husband, Albert, who just makes my life better. And also just great thanks to my amazing students and my colleagues at NYU Steinhardt. I love my job. I love going there every day. It's so amazing. So thank you so much for making my life really fun.
All right. So we did it, David. We have officially launched our book. So everyone go out and get a copy of Performing in Contemporary Musicals. It's available on Routledge and by visiting Amazon and hopefully your local bookstore soon. So go grab a copy. Use your discount code for your 20% off.
Yeah, and that's ASM02 on Routledge.com for 20% savings.
Great. Just so you know, that's $8.59 off the original price. I don't know what it is in the UK or Australia or Canada. I'm sorry, I didn't do the conversion, but I think you can use the code internationally.
I'm sure you can, you know, and every cent helps, right? Especially now.
Absolutely.
With inflation, we need help. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. Listeners of our show, we're giving out discounts anywhere we can. So listeners of our show can also get a 20% off discount to contemporarymusicaltheatre.com using the promo code MTR2022 on checkout.
So next week, join us for our show New and Recommended, when we'll be featuring some great new songs that have just been added to our site.
And in the meantime, don't forget to keep listening
in between the lines.
The lines.
Oh, that was not.
We could have worked on that, but that's okay. That's okay. It's okay.
You're free not to try.